Welcome to the Housing Opportunity Fund meeting for May 4th, 2023. I am very excited to be the new chair of the Housing Opportunity Fund group. Thank you to everyone. This is my first meeting. Luckily, I have all of the great URA staff here and Kelly to help me walk through our meeting today. We have a pretty full agenda. We are live at this point and being recorded. So our first order of business is actually going to be our roll call. And I needed to think about this more clearly so that I was actually seeing this large enough to be able to read. So my apologies for the slight pause there. I will now call the roll call. Please signify that you are present. Lena Andrews. Here. Morgan Overton. I don't see Morgan, and we are actually going to have an update related to Morgan in just a few moments. Dr. Jamil Bey.
I'm here.
Welcome. Tammy Thompson. Karen Garrett.
Present.
Jerome Jackson.
I am here.
Deb Gross.
Here.
Mark Masterson.
Here.
Deidre Washington.
Here.
Marcus Reed. Dr. Paul Spradley.
Here.
Alan Cisco. Derek Tillman. Aster Taclay.
Here.
I am present, Adrienne Wanaha. Kelly Ware.
Present.
And our last seat for the Western neighborhoods is vacant at this time. Our second order of business for today will be the review and approval of the minutes. Our URA team had circulated the meeting minutes from the last minute. Can we have a vote to accept those minutes?
Motion to approve.
Mark Masterson approves. Do we have a second?
So moved.
Thank you, Aster. Are there any objections or abstentions?
I was not present, so I'll abstain.
So Jamil Bey is abstaining. So we've had a motion and a second to approve the minutes from March 2nd. Can I have a vote? All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. Wonderful. So we have a very exciting introduction to make today. So Kiana is joining us. She is a new member of the URA staff, acting as the Chief Housing Officer. We're incredibly excited to have her on board. Kelly and I had the opportunity to meet with her last week, and we cannot wait for the ongoing collaboration and the things we're going to do together. Kiana, would you like to make a few remarks about yourself in way of introduction?
I think Sushila Namani Stanger, our executive director, actually might have a few words, and then maybe Kiana, if you want to.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, late developing, Adrienne.
Thank you. I appreciate that. My name is Sushila Namani Stanger, executive director at the URA. As you all know, affordable housing is an essential and robust unit at the URA, and Kiana Wassler, in her role as Chief Housing Officer, will complement Evan Miller's excellent work as Director of Housing. We're anticipating new initiatives, substantial additional funding, and complex projects in the pipeline. And Kiana will play a really important role in fulfilling the work and advancing these critical community needs. So I sincerely thank Evan and Kiana for their leadership and the URA Housing Department for their continued excellence. So thank you.
And thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Sushila and Adrienne. As stated, I'm Kiana Wassler. I'm happy to join you all here today and happy to rejoin the Urban Redevelopment Authority in the Chief Housing Officer capacity. I am a former URA employee with over a decade of experience in several different capacities within the organization, as well as some private sector affordable housing development experience. I want to thank all the past and present members of the Housing Opportunity Fund, Advisory Board, and committees for their tireless commitment towards advancing housing initiatives and efforts to meet the housing needs of the residents of the city of Pittsburgh. Access to safe and affordable housing continues to be a critical need throughout the neighborhoods, and the development of affordable housing is a key opportunity to advance to equitable development practices in many ways via construction, services, and other opportunities in the city. I'm excited to work alongside the URA's amazing housing department staff, as well as the HOF advisory board and committees in the advancement of this important work. And I look forward to hopefully meeting you all in person someday, but seeing you here monthly on these meetings. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're very excited to have you on board.
Thank you.
And then it wasn't on here because it was something that was forgotten until the very beginning of this meeting, but Morgan Overton left her role at the city. So she's no longer going to be on the Housing Opportunity Fund Advisory Board. So thank you, Morgan, for everything. I know she's not here today, but yeah, thank you so much for everything she's done.
I don't believe we have any registered public comment at this time. Is that correct? One of the things that we hope that we will continue to be able to support is robust public comment. And as this group, we have made that commitment and remade that commitment several times. Just to let everyone know, Kelly and I are collaborating and thinking through how to connect with the mayor's office to make sure we have the best opportunities for virtual and in-person meetings and to make sure that information is going out to the community. So we are sorry that we don't have any public comment today, but we will continue with our commitment to engaging public comments, and hopefully next month we will see some folks joining us for that part of our agenda. So I believe our next topic, Aster is going to give us some information on our homeowner assistance program. The HAP program, as many of us know it, some changes and updates.
Thank you, Adrian. I think actually I'm going to take this one. Hi, everybody.
Okay.
Good afternoon. I'm Derek Kendall Morris, Manager of Consumer Lending within the Housing Department here at the URA. And we're coming to you today asking for authorization to revise the guidelines for the Homeowner Assistance Program, specifically to eliminate the HAP Plus sub-program within the Homeowner Assistance Program so that we can more effectively and more efficiently serve all of the clients who have applied for assistance through HAP. Currently, the program does exist in sort of two buckets. One bucket which serves homeowners that are at 50% of AMI or below, and then the HAP Plus bucket which serves homeowners that are between 50 and 80% of AMI. The way those two buckets are set up, the HAP Plus program had a more complex financing structure where each homeowner was receiving one grant for $5,000 and then two loans, one which was a deferred loan and then one which was an amortizing loan that they were required to pay back monthly to the URA. We, over the last few years, really have found that financing structure for those 50 to 80% AMI homeowners is overly complex and is burdensome to those homeowners and is making their participation in the program more difficult. And we found that some of those homeowners have not been able to complete the program successfully because of those loan terms. So we'd like to streamline that and roll all homeowners that are at 80% AMI or below into one streamlined homeowner assistance program that provides the same funding terms to every single homeowner that participates. So that would be a $5,000 grant and then an up to $30,000 loan that is a second deferred mortgage So that would be $35,000 in total assistance that each homeowner could receive. So those are the changes that we would like to propose, and we're hopeful that you would all support that today. So, any questions?
Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you. I was like scrolling around my screen trying to figure out how to do the official hand raise. I just raised my own hand because I couldn't find it on my screen. Thanks. I just wanted to make sure I'm understanding this change. And what I think I heard was that the new program would be a $5,000 grant kind of upfront in hand. And then the 30,000 deferred mortgage means that you've got like another $30,000 to pay for your house, but you don't actually make payments on it because it's deferred. And so then what you're left with as the new homeowner is just writing kind of like your one check to your one bank mortgage lender.
Just to clarify, Councilman Gross, the homeowner assistance program is a program that it assists existing homeowners with making home
Okay.
repairs. This is
Oh,
for home repairs.
Thank you. Okay. So this is all of the, like, they may have an existing mortgage, but now like there's a leak in the roof or the heating went out and, or, you know, sewer work, which is often in the ballpark of $30,000.
Yes.
So the homeowner applies, gets the $5,000 cash. That's a grant.
So the homeowner never actually receives any of this funding directly.
Okay.
The URA facilitates the home repairs on the homeowner's behalf, and the funding goes to the contractor or the organization that conducts the repairs.
And so how was the last program too complicated if the homeowner is actually not managing any of it?
Well, with the way the program currently exists for those 50 to 80% AMI homeowners, you know, the funding doesn't actually go directly to the homeowner, but they are taking out, in their case, they're taking out 2 loans with the URA that get attached to their home. One is the deferred loan that they don't have to make payments on as long as they continue living in the home. And then the other is a traditional amortizing loan that they have to make a monthly payment on.
Okay, and that's the part that's being eliminated.
Correct.
Amortizing loan.
Yeah, the amortizing loan would be eliminated.
Okay. And can you help me also know how many people did successfully complete the program in its original, like, current iteration?
Sure, 1 second, let me pull that up.
So just having gone through some of these statistics today,
Thank you, Jad.
For the HAP Plus program, which is the 50 to 80% AMI, I believe we had about 95 individuals go through that portion of it. Whereas the HAP regular part, I believe, has upwards 300, upper 300s in the amount of individuals that have gone through.
And
Thank you, Jad.
the regular HAP with nearly 300 people is what income range?
50% AMI and below.
Oh, great. Amazing. So there's a lot more people at 50 AMI or below, 50% AMI or below, than at that 50% to 80%, which is, you know, to be fair, a narrow range. Yeah, interesting. But that's nearly 400. And then, so if we're making this easier, our goal is bigger than that, I guess. So what's the goal for if we vote yes today, of how many people we would serve?
Let's see. Well, currently on the HAP Plus side of the program, we have an additional, looks like there's about 30 people in the pipeline, and then we will be reopening the program later this year and be accepting more applications. And so our hope would be, as we reopen the program, if the terms are simplified and they're the same across the board for all homeowners, then more of those homeowners that apply this year would successfully be able to go through the program.
You don't have a goal for how many applications you want to see this year?
Well, we hope to, and we anticipate that we'll receive probably around 200 applications this year, because that's generally what we do see. But Jad, I don't have it on the top of my head. If you know, what was the allocation for HAP for this year?
So I always keep it on hand. I'm gonna do a flyby through the slides really quick. So give me 1 second here. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so for HAP, we had, this year we'll be getting 2,110,000. And then people can get up to 3,500. So I believe that comes out to like between 70 to 80 households, or like
Yep.
65 to 75, somewhere in there.
Yep, that's correct.
And these goals are broken up. I'm sorry, just well, we've got a chart up. What are the goals by income? Because we do that. You know, we've got the legislation requires, you know, percentages by income, and just sort of what's the impact there. And we run out. This money gets committed in months. This isn't something that's open year round. Is that what we're trying to do? Is to have the window open for a shorter period of time, or like what, to what end are we doing this? Because it doesn't seem like we have a shortage of people applying. And to, you know, if the money isn't going to get augmented somehow, do we want to try to keep driving it to the lower income bracket homeowners?
And has anyone kind of considered it in the framework of the whole home repair money, which is currently about hitting the streets already, I think?
So the whole home repair is going to be, it is not open yet. It will be opening, my understanding is later this month. And yeah, we are certainly looking at that, although, you know, that's going to serve the entire county. And the funding they have for whole home repairs is probably going to serve about 200 households across the county.
Right, yeah, that's not very much.
So I think it's not going to have a real substantial impact on our program and what we're doing in terms of city residents. Mark, to answer your question, I don't think we're looking to have the applications open for a shorter period of time. I think, you know, these changes are more targeted to making sure that the people who are accepted into the program actually do get to make it the whole way through and actually do receive, you know, the assistance that they need. You know, because frankly, I think that the big issue that we're seeing is, yes, you know, these homeowners are 50 to 80% AMI. They have slightly higher income than the lower income homeowners do, but, you know, attacking another monthly payment onto their budget is something that a lot of them can't bear. And so when we get to the point of actually creating a scope of work for that homeowner, trying to work with them with a contractor, you know, some of them have been dropping out and choosing to not receive the assistance at all because they can't afford that monthly payment. So I don't think these changes would really reduce the amount of applications that we will accept, or the amount of time that the applications will be open, but we will see, you know, a higher success rate in terms of homeowners that can actually receive the assistance on the back end.
Do I still have the floor? Or not, Madam Chair?
We don't have someone who has a hand raised at this point, so I believe, you know, you were open to make additional comments or ask questions.
Awesome, great. So I just want to make sure I got the numbers kind of written down the right way. So we already in the original program, which is like from 2018 till now, I think I saw on the chart, we've done nearly 400, stabilized like 400 homeowners, 100 at the 50 to 80% AMI, and 300 at below 50% AMI. And so those repairs have been made and they're in the program. And then if we do this change, we're anticipating another 200 applications, but is that in just the next 12 months? Or as Mr. Masterson was saying, like, is that just in what time frame
Right.
are you expecting 200 applications? Again, I'm just trying to I just couldn't recollect the scale and the targeting of the program.
Typically we open the program every spring or summer, depending on when we receive the 2023, in this case, the 2023 allocation from the city. We reopen the program and we take applications until we reach the number of applications that we have funding to support. So for this year, Jad's correct, that probably will be around 70 to 80 applications. And then at that time, we'll shut it down. So looking at prior years as an example, that usually means that, our application round is about a month, because we do receive typically about 200 applications just in that first month that the program is open. And then once the program is closed again, then we do maintain a list of everybody who reaches out to the URA who would like to apply for this program. And then we will let them know next year when it's open again that they can apply. So we do currently, I know, have a list of about 300 people who have said that they want to apply for this program. So we will be notifying them when we open that this is available. So there is a big pipeline for the program. It does close up rather quickly. And that has been an ongoing issue. This is just a huge need that we see, across the county, across our region, and certainly here in the city.
And those just again, help me, the applicants that maybe were on the waiting list for a year because they didn't get their funding in their first application, you're finding that mainly the retention rate is high, that they're still there and the repairs have not been made.
Yes, I would say that's in general fairly common. A lot of these homeowners are in situations where if they don't receive assistance to make these repairs, they're not really sure how they're going to do that.
Right. I can stop questioning, but maybe I'll send you an email because I'd be curious to see, like, what I would hate to see happen is that applicant isn't there the next year because they're not in their home anymore.
Sure.
Right. And so it's just, again, I'm just trying to get a sense of kind of like, where is the intensity and like, what is the scale of our response? So I'll stop there. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Absolutely. Do we have other questions or comments related to this request from the URA? In the absence of additional questions and comments, do we have a motion to authorize the URA to eliminate the HAP Plus program and allow all homeowners under 80% AMI to use the same financing terms?
I move it's Kelly Ware, that we authorize the URA to eliminate the HAP Plus subprogram and serve all homeowners under 80% AMI with the same financing terms.
I'll second that.
Jamil Bey has seconded that motion. Any abstentions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed to the motion as presented? Great, motion carries. Thank you so much, Derek.
Thank you all.
We're now going to move on to the for sale development program. We have some interesting data from that program, and Evan's going to walk us through that and some potential changes to the program to make it more robust and more successful.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Evan Miller here with the Housing Department at the URA, and wanted to discuss today some amendments that we're looking to make to the for sale development program, largely in an effort to make it more responsive to what the current development climate is like here in Pittsburgh, especially for sale development. What we're hearing from our partners in the community about where they could see improvements, and allowing for the production of this program to ramp up over the coming year or years to come. So some of those changes that are I'll to give a full picture of what's going on at the URA. I think this is important background as well. There is currently an ARPA funded for sale development program targeted towards land trusts that was budgeted by City Council that the URA will be launching in the coming months here. And so that required the creation of a program that's very similar to this for sale development program. Being that it's a newer program, that ARPA funded program, there were some enhancements made, and we wanted to translate those over to the HOF funded for sale development program so that all entities that are working in the for sale development space in Pittsburgh have a similar ability to do their work and carry it out well. And so some of the changes that are being requested this month, and this will go to the URA board for final approval, is adding clear guidance on conservatorship, knowing that that's a tool that's being used by parties throughout the city to try to get affordable homeownership opportunities online. Also explicit language that allows for limited equity cooperatives to participate in the for sale development program. Another exciting development is the ability to use a rent to own model when there's issues up front with fully fundraising for a project. Maybe the structure can be habitable, but the sales price allowable will not fully fund the deal for the nonprofit developer. So they might have to generate some income through renting, or it allows a household that's interested in home ownership, but maybe not there yet at this exact moment, being able to get that first mortgage amount that's needed to make the deal pencil out. They could rent to own for a period of time, and then upon the sale of the unit, the FSDP financing would convert to a grant that supports long-term affordability. Also adding a more clear definition about the eligible costs and the time frame for it. There's just not been clear definitions in our existing guidelines. So any acquisition or work that's been done within the 12 months leading up to the application would be eligible, but trying to make sure that long-term assets that have been held for years and possibly improved years ago aren't coming to this program kind of at the very end of the line. We'd like to use the URA's staff. We have a whole quality controls and inspections team that can help to verify the construction that's being done, that the scope is correct, that we're going to be handing over a unit to a home buyer that's really move-in ready and inhabitable. And so we want to have the ability to have some oversight over that process. And then lastly, and I would say most importantly, is increasing the available per unit subsidy. Currently, it's at $70,000 for every unit that's rehabbed. And we're looking to increase that to $100,000 per unit rehabbed. And then for new construction, it was capped at $100,000 per unit. And the proposal is to increase that amount, that maximum allowable amount, to $130,000 per new construction unit. So we think this will be really beneficial to those that are looking, that continue to do this work here in Pittsburgh. And as many of you know, the ability to do these for sale construction projects has really been diminished by rising costs in construction and just overall difficulties in acquiring properties and gaining site control. So we're hoping to make that a bit more streamlined so that we can continue to strive towards these end goals of creating more affordable for sale home ownership. So I'll stop it there, but I think the action on the table today is authorization to make the following amendments to the for sale development program. I do see Councilperson Gross, you've got your hand raised, or Chairwoman, if you'd like to divvy up the comments, I'll stop there.
Just a quick point. Evan talked about all of these, very important reasons for us to be talking about this today. And one of which being, coming into alignment across different programs that are administered by the same body. It gives more transparency on the programs. It allows us for better outreach so that folks have a deeper understanding of programs. It also really allows for us to be thinking about strategies more globally across the community that may have more impact or really enhance our ability to manage the programs. So thank you to URA staff for bringing this to the table. We have a lot of hands up. I'm going to start actually with Dr. Jamil Bey.
Thank you. Where would the funds come from for the increase in the requested increase in the per unit subsidy? Are we trading up, being able to do fewer units, or are there new funds available?
That's a good question. I think if we're looking at it from just the HOF allocation, yes, we are trading off the ability to do as many units, but I think the argument that could be made is that there's some deals that just sit there because there's still this additional gap that they can't fill or having trouble filling, and so this will likely move the pace along of projects actually getting completed at a greater rate than if it remained at this normal or the existing per unit amount. But then also important to mention is that there are some other sources at the URA that can be put towards for sale development through this program. So we have CDBG money as well as home investment partnerships money, and from time to time PAYGO money from the city as well. And so oftentimes when we receive the application for a project, we'll vet its eligibility for all of the different sources being that we have on hand and kind of figure out what works best for it. So although there's a finite amount in every annual allocation plan from the Housing Opportunity Fund, we do have other sources as well that would help supplement and possibly make up what these increases in the per unit subsidy being proposed are.
Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you. First of all, I am so grateful that you have added the limited equity housing co-ops to participate. Council passed a resolution last year looking for a report on limited equity housing co-ops, and the URA was the first agency to respond. We don't have responses from some of the departments yet. And I remember kind of explaining myself at the time saying, what council doesn't want to see is that there's only there are funding pots for individuals, and then housing co-ops don't qualify. And then there's funding pots for like multi-unit development, and housing co-ops don't qualify. So this is a for sale development program, and so thank you for adding limited equity housing co-ops as an allowable form to apply. It says here on your slide that our vote today would amend to allow clear guidance on conservatorship. Did you email us the guidance on the conservatorships?
Yes, I can email you that afterwards. I think
I would kind of like to know what it is before I vote. Do you want to describe what the guidance
sure.
is?
So the proposed language is properties with conservatorship rulings in favor of the applying entity for sale development program are eligible, except when the conservator filings are against the city or the URA. So we'd rather work with community partners that are having issues with publicly owned property through means other than conservatorship. But for privately owned properties, we just want to ensure that the conservatorship filing has played out, and that we're not going to invest public funds into improving a private owner's property that they might be able to get back. We want to make sure that it
absolutely right. You don't want to be like taking grandma's house for big for-profit development or something,
right?
And I can't figure out how to take my raised hand down.
Your hand is down. You're perfect.
Is it?
It is.
Oh no, I see it. It was somebody else's hand. Sorry. So we're allowing it, but you're not anticipating that this is going to be like the whole pot of money is all going to conservatorship for sale development or anything?
No, not anticipating it. I think it's just been our experience in the last several years that at times we've been approached by community groups that have filed conservatorship or in the process of filing conservatorship looking for funding, and because the guidelines were largely silent on it, it was a bit of a gray area. But it is what we've heard is from community partners is that it's a tool that can be very helpful in turning around some of the distressed properties in neighborhoods. So we would like to create that ability for it to be a component of the program, but I would not go so far as to say that it's the main focus of it.
You've mentioned community groups throughout talking about conservatorship. Is the part of the guidance that it's only if it's, is this whole pot of money restricted to community group applications? For sale development program?
Yeah, it
is
is
restricted to just like CDCs?
not entirely. There is the ability for a quote unquote for-profit developer to work with the program, but only if they have a proven partnership for that project with a neighborhood community group and some type of memorialized agreement that states what the role of that community-based nonprofit is in the project. So there are not for-profit developers that are coming to this program and this board for funding through this program, but at times there might be a mixed income development where some component of affordability is desired by the community, and the developer would partner with a neighborhood community group to help apply here at the Housing Opportunity Fund for funding through this program.
Sure, I can think of projects that I've seen like that, but when you talked about conservatorship, you said only that community groups may have filed for conservatorship. Is the guidance on conservatorship that funding will only be considered if it is the community group partner and not the for-profit partner who has filed for conservatorship?
It's not currently specified in the guidelines, but that if that's something that the board would find important, I think we could make that distinction that only nonprofits that are applying for conservatorship are eligible for funding through this program. I don't think that would be an issue at all.
I have seen community groups kind of intervening to stop for-profit firms filing conservatorship in neighborhoods. And so it does seem like we're trusting conservatorship when it's kind of in, aligned with community priorities and with the community group. So, and again, I think if I'm just kind of inferring what I heard from your own words, that was kind of the scenario that was being imagined here. So the language should reflect the scenario that is trying to be accommodated, I would think.
So let's get comments from Mark, and then we can talk about if there is, additional parameters or language that we would like to put into that motion.
I'll just wrap up then by saying that in voting for these amendments, I'd like to actually see amendments. Maybe it's because I'm used to being, at kind of council table, but seeing bullet points, obviously I'm going to have way too many questions in the meeting if I can't actually see the legislative language or the program language. Thank you.
That's a great process point. Thank you.
I just would like to ask a question about why are you defining the period of eligible cost as no earlier than 12 months? Having done projects and with community developers, I have yet to see one that had a pre-development period of shorter than 12 months. So aren't you going to be making a higher hurdle there for folks to do a conservatorship and to get that, if just on the example we're talking about, is going to in most cases take more than 12 months for the community group to do that. If you're trying to buy a property from the city of Pittsburgh, it's going to take them 18 months just to clear the title, and you might be spending money on the architect, and you'll have site control and waiting for that process. So why did you pick 12 months?
We have seen some scenarios where a property's just been owned by a community group for a number of years, and then they're renting it, and then at some point they decide that they want to sell it instead, and so they'll try to apply to this program with, you know, the construction cost that took place 4 or 5 years ago. It's just it's difficult from an oversight standpoint to guarantee that the construction work that was done was all necessary. I'm open to suggestions on sort of maybe building out this eligible cost timeline if you think.
You know, we've financed projects where, hey, they had to do roof repair and sewer repair, and that occurred well in advance, you know, of to get to save the building from deteriorating. And rarely does this stuff happen in a 12-month time frame. And it's not for folks, you know, just trying to get drawings of all the things that you need to do. It's taken you, you know, 3 to 6 months just to get PLI to approve construction drawings. This 12 months is not the period to pick. I don't know, you know, I'm not sure, is there like an avalanche of folks that are coming in with those conversions, or is this just one project and we're gonna, you know, really make it difficult for the community folks to actually do these projects?
There's not an avalanche of it, but I would counter that the scenario that you're discussing there, where people are taking, you know, needing 3 to 6 months to get a building permit, conceivably as they're building out the deal before they've even acquired the property, they would be engaging with the Housing Opportunity Fund for providing an application and seeking funding before any of that starts. I think we're just trying to take away projects sort of retroactively, or that are coming in long after construction's been completed. And this program is really meant to provide funding for typically construction grant financing for these projects. That being said, we do have pre-development funding available if a project was very early on trying to pay for an architect, pay for geotechnical or other costs that are part of, you know, that pre-construction phase.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm not sure that, you know, this is, maybe we need more information before we take a vote. I certainly do, about some of the definitions and what is in and what isn't in with the 12 months and why 12 months. And again, we talked, is this something that you talk to folks that have successfully completed the program to ask them if that's a reasonable period of time?
Yes, I'd say when we've had applications for program or for units where it is largely after the fact that they're seeking funding, we make it very clear that that's not so much the intention of this program. It's really for ongoing efforts to rehab or construct units. And I think they've been receptive to that, understanding that, you know, the URA has, as stewards of this public funding, needs to ensure that the for sale units that are going to, you know, low and moderate income families are, you know, quality units that have some level of oversight during the construction, and we're not paying for shoddy work, or that we can ensure our MWBE goals are met. You know, various components of that come along with public funding that really happen during the oversight period of or through oversight during the construction period.
I don't disagree with any of that. I just don't think that's what we're voting on here. It's too broad.
So we have had some robust discussion and questions. It feels to me, and I may not have the full temperature of all of our members, that what is being requested is more significant language and a deeper understanding of some of these parameters, including conservatorship and who is taking that conservatorship, and these limits that have been set related to costs that come in prior to, before, longer than 12 months prior to the application, and also some questions about the subsidy increases. So it sounds to me like we're not ready to take a vote, but what is the thinking of our members?
A motion to table this until we get those items clarified.
I'll second that motion.
So the group would like to table this. The specific questions that are coming back to the URA is, who are we talking about related to conservatorship? What are we talking about exactly? Eligible costs, the timeline prior to folks coming to application, what could be acceptable? And then what are the impacts of increasing the per unit subsidies at the level that it is suggested? Did I miss any of the questions from our membership?
Just a point of order, the motion to table requires a roll call vote, I believe, and then you can't add the agenda item back to the agenda unless those people vote to bring it back.
I just wanted to get some parameters around, we were tabling to get what information?
So point of order is just me making that technical point, that you might want to just a motion to hold. And then it could come back on the next agenda automatically.
So, Councilwoman Gross, if I hear you correctly, just based on the term of either table or hold creates a different process. So you're saying if we table it, then Jamil will then have to make another motion to put that back onto the agenda with me being the person to second that motion. Is that correct?
Doesn't have to be the exact same people, but I'm just looking it up now. I'm pretty sure that only the people who voted either up or down on tabling it are eligible to vote to untable it. But I'm doubting myself. But generally at council, when we just want to like put something off to the next meeting, we just say motion to hold.
Jamil, would you like to amend your motion?
I don't. Yes, I'm okay with amending the motion to hold, but this is also a chance for us to revisit which rules of order we have adopted. If we're going to be formal, more formal than we have been, then we should all be on the same page with the rules of order and the rules, the rules that we're adopting. And so, these are not Robert's rules. Council rules are different. Parliamentary rules are different. So we need to be clear on that. And we could probably all use a refresher.
Thank you, Mr. Bay.
Good point. Thank you.
And I don't believe in our actual bylaws. I'm not remembering a tabling parameter versus a hold parameter. So for the purposes of this particular meeting, do we need to move to actually make a motion for putting this on the agenda next month with some additional information that's been requested?
I think that's the most appropriate course of action, considering we're not clear on which direction we want to go. So I think we should just move forward with that, and I'm happy to make the motion if Jamil or Mr. Bay would like to.
Yes, I'll rescind my motion to table and give you the space.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to move this item to next month or the next meeting of this body.
Second that.
Thank you, everyone. More to come. Thank you to the URA staff. Hopefully you have clarity on the issues that have been brought forward, and we can pick this conversation up next month.
Do we have to vote? Did we vote on it?
My apologies. All those in favor of moving this to next month's agenda, please say aye.
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 Any abstentions? Any nays? Great. I don't see Megan with us at this point. There you are, Megan.
Hi, Adrian. I apologize for my haggard appearance, everyone. I jumped off an Amtrak in front of a camera, and I'm doing my best to make it to the weekend. So apologies, but let me just jump in on discussing the Fair Housing Summit that the Fair Housing Partnership, the Pittsburgh Commission on Human Relations, the Housing Authority of the City of Pittsburgh, and the Urban Redevelopment Authority hosted last week, and how some of the topics pertaining in that event certainly are applicable to this body, as you've heard me speak on certain topics, as questions that have been arisen in the past couple of topics are exactly the kind of conversation that we've been discussing over the past few years, has been, establishing what the criteria is, what the goals are of certain HOF programming, so that the programming with the limited funds that we have is not simply a matter of equality, but also a matter of equity, a matter of understanding the most vulnerable and how these limited funds are being distributed in a way that recognizes that. But to dive into the Fair Housing Summit quickly, just to touch base, is that, there was a nice space where the breakout group from the Housing Alliance, was brainstorming housing models that were limited only by the imagination, in the space of, and this is the conversations we're seeing play out here with different conversations about limited equity cooperatives, community land trusts, different housing models. And I ask that as you consider all these variety of housing models, is that any model, any grouping of power and development and funding is vulnerable to concepts of discrimination, whether intentional or not, without explicit guardrails that those bodies or entities are engaged in a fair housing training, understanding the fair housing applications of how various models exist of housing decision makers. And we'll go through a couple of examples of how that plays out, especially with what we see already with homeownership associations and different cooperatives throughout the city, where when you convene a group of like-minded individuals, even with good intentions, a lack of knowledge about the fair housing requirements can lead to concerns that are simply best addressed proactively. And also to share with this body is that the summit, in a discussion on the legalities of housing, is that the landlord-tenant legal assistance and mediation that we've seen funded starting from the COVID-19 crisis, as you can imagine, is tremendously popular. Mediation as a means of addressing issues immediately, while legal resources are certainly limited. And the Lawyer of the Day program is particularly popular and provides an opportunity for tenants who have not otherwise engaged with legal assistance to have that opportunity when they arrive at the magistrate. And these programs that we're seeing in the city of Pittsburgh, especially as the ERAP funding is sunsetting, that is being provided by the HOF, was greatly popular in the discussion on what the legalities are regarding landlord-tenant requirements within the city. And so next, I want to talk on a couple different topics that we might have touched on in the past. And just to reiterate, we're having a lot of deep discussion quickly. And so remember that each of these topics have nuanced legalities when we're talking about private landlords and housing providers who are receiving federal funding. And that's looking into the housing protections related to domestic violence and language barriers for accessing housing that we see with our immigrant and refugee population. And so, as you may know, Survivors of domestic violence can be covered by the federal protected classes, such as sex, race, disability, or national origin based on a disparate impact theory. And that theory being that certain populations are disproportionately survivors of domestic violence. However, the city of Pittsburgh has survivor of domestic violence as an explicit protected class as well. And additionally, you layer in the Federal Violence Against Women Act, or VAWA, and that protects survivors within federally funded housing. And so, for example, survivors of domestic violence may need an emergency transfer or to be released from their lease to their safety. So we were thrilled to have Sandra Park, a lawyer at the ACLU Women's Rights Project, and she gave us some remarks about how municipal nuisance or crime-free ordinances are weaponized against survivors by penalizing survivors for calling the police or other emergency services. One of the huge ACLU cases that occurred in Norristown, Pennsylvania in the east. And now what we're seeing, and so Pennsylvania has worked hard on addressing that nuisance or crime-free ordinances that require a municipality to require a landlord to evict if the household, a renter household, calls the police or EMS more than 3 times within a 6 or 12-month period. We're seeing those kind of policies proliferate within HOAs and cooperatives and other locally run housing decision-making, where it's imperative to get the fair housing information to these entities. For example, in the last year, FHP had cases such as a survivor in a co-op where she was no longer with her abuser, had obtained the legal protection she could get, but the abuser continued to come to her apartment building, her condo building, beat on the door, cause a scene, and require the police to be called. And she did all that she could to keep him away, but the co-op moved to evict her. And so it's a consideration for how our housing models are addressing the fair housing protections and how they're operated. And so, but Sandra also talked about how the reauthorization of VAWA last fall at Congress included municipalities certifying that their compliance with VAWA, including these nuisance and crime-free ordinances. And now HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, has a format for filing VAWA complaints directly in an administrative format, so you don't have to access an attorney. And what we see with federally subsidized housing is common VAWA violations include conditioning emergency transfers based on a credit score, or passing a housekeeping inspection, or refusing to bifurcate, separate a lease between the survivor and the abuser. And so the different components of how the way that this body can use the power of the purse to, ask some questions and be aware and put it into the forefront of the housing providers receiving federal funding. Simply how these rules and policies within their housing is operating, after development. Of course, these have federal requirements that I'm sure there's policies in place, but looking at the pragmatic implication of how they're addressed on the ground for us as a city after they're built. And additionally, in a panel about language barriers in housing, so we know in Pittsburgh we have an immensely diverse immigrant and refugee population. And so we have a tremendous amount of languages represented in our immigrant and refugee population. We don't have 2 or 3 languages that are the clear majority of the languages represented in our populations with limited English proficiency. And so at the federal level, housing discrimination based on language, for example, a landlord refusing to take a tenant or interact with a tenant in any language other than English, can be addressed by the federal protected class of national origin. However, in the city of Pittsburgh, we do have language preferred and citizenship status as explicit protected class. And so a current initiative by the city's Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs is a model lease. And this model lease is meant to be a simple, straightforward lease that includes the fundamentals. And upon it being finalized, the city will have it translated into several languages. And so now that lease's availability in a multitude of languages will assist private city landlords with being proactive about language compliance and being able to engage and interact with immigrant and refugees with a lease available in the languages that both parties need. Additionally, the model lease includes a clause for survivors of domestic violence that FHP crafted with the private area landlord a couple of years ago that allows for a survivor of domestic violence to be released from their lease for their safety within a private housing context. So if a survivor has gotten the PSA, the stalking continues, or they no longer feel safe to remain in the unit where the abuser has had access to previously, they're often faced with the thousands of dollars charge of having to be released from their lease early, or impending immense physical harm for staying in that unit. And there's a lease that a clause that we're working to have area landlords understand how they can implement protections that protect both parties, but make sure that we are not forming a business model that is based on some discriminatory terms. And in the federally funded housing space is looking at how we're making sure that the language assistance plans that are required federally is we've seen such a difficulty with the LAPs locally because of how many languages are represented in our populations. And so what I hope that you can take away from the conversations we've been having and from the summit that we had recently is this is never the end. We've had some tremendous progress, and we also have a tremendous way to go. So how do we talk with developers and other bodies, other housing decision makers that approach this body about how they are addressing survivors of domestic violence and how they're addressing language access and making sure that we are finding ways to capture data and to create entry points for some of the most vulnerable throughout the low-income households within the city of Pittsburgh also have access to the programs that the Housing Opportunity Fund is creating and maintaining. So I hope to see more of the HOF's activities in April of 2024 based on the work that we're going to get done this year. So if you have any questions or thoughts, I'm always happy to discuss and to keep the conversation going. And I appreciate all of your support.
Thank you so much, Megan. Are there questions for Megan at this point, or any follow-up that folks would like to do with Megan while she's with us? Well, I will personally say I think that it's exciting. I am very disappointed that I did not make the summit. I think some of the points that you raised are really wonderful for our discussion when we're looking at applications and when we have the opportunity to speak to developers. So thank you, Megan, for always putting those important items on the agenda. One item that Megan actually brought to my attention is that we have a unique opportunity as a community at this point. HUD is seeking public comment on potential changes to Section 504. For folks who are unfamiliar with Section 504, it prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability in programs and activities that are receiving federal assistance from HUD. This is a wonderful opportunity. HUD has not opened up the dialogue on Section 504 in quite a while. I would personally like to see us take some time in our next meeting to discuss some of the interesting questions that have been raised related to the prior 504 standards and things that we can do to take us into the next phase of more equitable and diverse housing. So if I would like to hear our members having an interest in some discussion about 504, it gives us the unique opportunity to connect with HUD in a different way. So not just focusing on our local work here in Pittsburgh, but focusing on national work that could have some great impact for folks that we're serving through the HOF.
I just have a comment, if that's all right, Adrienne.
Of course.
And correct me if I'm wrong, has this body ever, or has it been common practice to provide public comment as the body itself? I think that's a really powerful statement. If we were, if we really want to create or amplify voices, that's something that we could possibly do. I don't know if that's outside of how we interact, but I definitely would like to see that, since we do have committees and may have the bandwidth to kind of work on the wording and kind of present back to everyone.
Thank you so much. That was exactly my thinking. We have not to date. I don't think that there's anything in our legislation that would preclude us from being able to weigh in on many topics locally, regionally, and nationally that do impact the work that we're trying to achieve here.
Thank you for raising Section 504, the Rehabilitation Act, Adrian. To anyone who, if you haven't yet watched the Netflix documentary called Crip Camp, the documentary is actually about the passage and the disability civil rights movement for Section 504. And the law has not been opened up for discussion since 1988, with the last update to what disability compliance with federal funding looks like. And so the HUD rulemaking has a number of questions they are asking for a response to that I certainly think is a worthwhile discussion for this group here. And additionally, I forgot to add is that I'll provide the model lease current iteration to the URA staffers to distribute. And if anyone has any feedback or thoughts, now is the time to, in the space that you look at with housing, to offer thoughts and feedback as we finalize the model lease in order to get it further translated for use and dissemination.
Thank you so much, Megan. I will connect with the URA staff. Is there any opposition to us potentially taking a look at Section 504 in our next discussion in June? Well, hearing none, I will definitely connect with the URA staff and see how we could craft some conversation related to that in our next meeting. And thank you, Megan, for offering to send out that sample lease. I think that's really exciting and can be incredibly valuable to all of us. So this is the time we're going to talk about all things advisory board and URA. So for our location update, as I mentioned, Kelly and I are going to continue to work toward a resolution to have a good public engaged meeting location, whether that be a more inclusive virtual option or a more inclusive in-person option. We will be, continuing to pursue that together to make sure that we have the best opportunities to not only have transparency with our community, but also to engage our community. For our subcommittees, I'm trying to watch hands and make sure I'm not missing anybody. For our subcommittees, we are kicking off this month. This is the first official month in the new committee configuration that came out of the retreat. We are hoping that we will have any of our membership that has not stepped forward and chosen a committee do that right away so that we can have those committees convene, we can have all voices represented, and we can have some really wonderful discussions that will work in parallel with our HOF full group discussions. So if you are one of the folks that has not taken this great opportunity to connect back to the URA and share the committee that you would like to participate in, please do that. You can even do that now as we're having our conversation, and just let them know which group you'd like to participate in. There's definitely lots of work to be done, lots of diversity in the conversation. So we're looking forward to everyone being able to plug in a way that makes the most sense to you and that you're the most passionate about. We also have some great news on our survey and annual allocation data collection.
Yeah, so one note about the community or the committee kickoff as well. For anybody that didn't fill it out, that poll that I sent out about which committees you'd like to be part of, I can resend that again, either after this meeting today or tomorrow for those of you that didn't. But I will also send what I have so far to everybody as well, indicating who's in what committees so that the individuals that are leading these committees can work with those individuals and at least get started this month. Yes, and in terms of our community feedback survey for our annual allocation plan of 2024, that launched on May 1st, so we're very excited about that. Did an email campaign to all the individuals that we have worked with in housing, people that have called us or people that have come to our community events. So that's really how we kicked it off, was by launching to people that have specifically expressed interest in our housing programs. But we sent it to all of you as well. There was a social media toolkit, which I know some people had some questions on, that was attached to what I had sent out. In that, there are some different images if you wanted to post it on social media. And then, different wordings. You can come up with your own as well. These are just suggestions. We also did post it on our social media as well at the URA. So if you want to repost what we have posted already, you can feel free to do so. But this will be open until July 31st. So it's going to be open for a while. And in addition to this, we are doing some community events. And I have some of them listed out here that we have scheduled so far. Now, we only have, let me get my screen to move here. There we go. We only have 6 that have been scheduled so far, and some of them, certain aspects of them are TBD. But we do have about, I believe, 8 others that of different community partners that wanted to work with us. All the events that we're trying to do are being incorporated into something that's already ongoing. From last year's community feedback survey, the ones that we did standalone sessions didn't tend to be as successful as events where, the community was already meeting and incorporating ourselves into those. So all of these meetings that we have scheduled so far are, incorporating ourselves into these already occurring meetings of some kind. And we're trying to hit each council district within this as well, so that, we're trying to get all through the community. Yeah, so I will say if anybody wants to go to any of these meetings, I will continue to update all of you with new meetings that are being scheduled until the end of this period. If any of you want to attend any of these, let me know. I'll make sure that we have the information sent over to you. But I will send out an email with this information after this meeting as well, along with the other things that we discussed.
And if your affiliate organizations, your community groups want to host the URA for this dialogue, they are open, excited, and willing to do that. So any of our great community connections that we feel that we want to introduce this conversation, we have that opportunity. So don't forget that option. And also don't forget, if you're not following the URA, this is a good time to do so on social media. Because then we'll have, our finger on the pulse of what's going out from them, and we can reinforce that, and we can also use those materials for our own conversations. So if you're not plugged into the URA yet, today is a good day to do so.
Yes, thank you, Adrian. And I will say too, we've actually had a decent amount of responses already from this. Last year we probably only had about I think it was like 280 responses in total, and that was over a couple months span. But already we have about over 40 responses. So it's exciting to see that we're getting a lot of responses this early on. I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to, have a high turnout of responses this year. So please, distribute among your community groups and community members that you know of. We want to make sure this gets out to as many people as possible. And all of you are a great resource to reach out to the community as well. So we want to utilize that. And then it is me again. So our regular program expenditure updates. again, most of the updates have just been minor additions to the amounts that have been dispersed. One thing I will note is that the homeowner assistance program is continuing to have a lot more money going out the door. I said that last month and I'm saying it again. I think our efforts in trying to increase our contractor pool and things of that nature have really been effective. And there's a lot more money going out the door and projects being completed. So excited about that. But otherwise, it's just been all incremental increases across programs. As usual, I'm going to go through each of the programs with the some graphical information. If you have any questions, feel free to stop me as I'm moving along. For the down payment closing cost and assistance program, we have percent funds by council district and AMI level. For the legal assistance program, same thing, number of projects by city council district and by AMI level. For the housing stabilization program, we have the number or the percentage of households served by AMI and by council district. For the homeowner assistance program, we have the percent funds spent by council district and then the bigger breakout. For those of you that may have not seen this before, not been on previous meetings, I do parse these out between HAP, HAP Plus, and both of them combined. And also, one utilizing all of our different funding sources and one just utilizing our HOF funding sources of money that's gone out the doors in the pipeline. Our for sale development and rental gap programs. This has been unchanged since last month in terms of projects that have gone through. And then I know there was quite a few people that were not here at our last month's meeting that are today. So I do want to just highlight this one again. We did a nice breakout of our demonstration dollars, and actually thinking about that, I know that was a discussion that I know people had talked about at one point, is maybe changing the name of that to something else to think about for future agendas. But yeah, we broke out these dollars by what projects they had went to. One was, a homeless shelter. Some of it went into the Bedford campus project, HSP, lab pilot, and homeowner assistance. So this kind of shows how these demonstration dollars have been used in the past. And that's all I got. Thank you, Adrienne.
Absolutely. So are there any questions or comments related to, our quick review of expenditures or the public meetings, open survey, and our data collection for this year's, our next allocation plan? Hearing none, we are on for next month, June 1st, the first Thursday in the month at 2 p.m. We are going to do another virtual meeting, and Kelly and I will be working in the interim to try to solidify what our strategy will be going forward, per our discussion in the last meeting on how we would be convening and ensuring that we have that, public input and transparency. If there are no further questions or comments, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Mark. And thank you, everyone. We'll expect to be engaging with the URA on the for sale development program next month, having a conversation on section 504, in addition to our regular business. And hopefully we will have some applications to take a look at. So thank you, everyone, and we will see you next month. And please make sure you sign up for your committee.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great job.
Thanks, Adrienne.
Right.
Good job.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.